There's a special place in my heart for very big books, and I have been wanting to make this video for a while now. So we are going to get right into what I'm talking about, and that is my 10 favorite big books that are standalones, or if they're part of a series, the series isn't worth reading, or the book works well by itself. They have to be over 600 pages and more than 200,000 words. I think the general consensus from everyone I've asked and ever I've looked online is when you're not narrowing it down just to a genre, because fantasy has a much higher tolerance for ginormous books, but if you're looking across the whole spectrum of fiction and nonfiction, big books are generally 600 pages or over 200,000 words. So I am going to dive right into my top 10 list, and we will start from smallest book to largest book. Now, a lot of these on the list are books I guarantee most of you have not read. 4 of them are nonfiction, but 6 of them are fiction, and let's dive right into them. The Victorian City by Judith Flanders, 202,000 words and 544 pages. This book is wonderful. What it is Judith Flanders is giving you a look at Victorian London through the eyes of Charles Dickens. She talks about Charles Dickens' stomping grounds in London and where he would go, because he would go on long walks all through the night, just go crazy places, because that's kind of how he got his thoughts together for writing his books. And it also helped him stay in touch with normal people living their lives in London. And so what Judith Flanders does is shows you all the pieces of the Victorian city in a very interesting way. I love nonfiction books that work off of a premise like this. The structure of telling you a story through something familiar, Charles Dickens, to educate you on something you might not know a lot about, Victorian London. I highly recommend it. If any of you are fans of Dickens, this is a must read. It doesn't quite work as a biography of Dickens, but it comes very close, and it's like a baby biography mixed with learning about the place that gave Dickens his ideas. You see what I mean about books that none of you have probably read? There's not a lot of ratings for this one on Goodreads. Like, there's an okay amount. The book's not dead and it's still being published, but as I go through this list, you'll see a lot of these are some unknown bangers. Next, we have Red Metal by Mark Greaney and H. Ripley Rawlings, 216,000 words and 652 pages. Mark Greaney is known for the Gray Man series, and H. Ripley Rawlings is known for serving in the Marine Corps in the Pentagon. What this book is what World War III would look like. Now, this book was published in 2019, and let me know if this premise sounds familiar. Russia is attempting a power grab, so they invade Western Europe as a distraction in order to nab something else that they want. Yeah, this book is modern times. It uses modern military tech and tactics. H. Ripley Rawlings, I cannot say his name. I'm just going to use Rawlings from now on. You have no idea how many times I've edited out me messing up his name. Rawlings served in the Pentagon, understands military tactics, and this book is about what would happen if Russia invaded Western Europe. It's action-packed. There's amazing characters in the book, and the premise is Russia is invading and just storming through Europe as a distraction while they seize rare earth mineral mines in Africa. Kind of sounds preposterous until you realize that they're called rare earth minerals for a reason, and if you control them, you control all of the electronics of the world. And so even if they took it and couldn't keep it and destroyed the mine, it would cripple Western economies. And this book is about the West attempting to recover from an unexpected invasion from Russia through Belarus, something Russia would never do. And they're trying to figure out what's going on, why Russia is doing this, and then try to stop them in Africa. It has some of the coolest military combat I have ever read in a book. It's like Battlefield 4 levels of just ridiculous. There is an epic tank battle that is absolutely amazing. It shows what NATO is capable of. Like, this book shows you why NATO and protecting Western Europe from Russia is important. It shows you how it would work if things popped off. Oh, and I will say there's one flaw with this book, but I think the flaw was that Rawlings could not talk about it. There's no special forces in this book, which is really bizarre. There's like a Marine Force recon thing going on. When you get to the Western Europe stuff and even to Africa, the whole time it's happening, I'm like, where are the Green Berets? Where are the PJs? Like, where are these special forces that can get on a plane in North Carolina and end up in Africa or Europe in like 10 hours Where are they? Why aren't they dropping in? So I think that part of that was he straight up couldn't talk about how special operations would work in an invasion like that, because that would be a dead giveaway to the enemies of the West. And another thing, this does not have a sequel, but it teases a sequel, and it teases a sequel that I really hope gets written, and it's about China invading Taiwan. So maybe we'll get a sequel, but for now it is a standalone and it is a banger. As you can tell, some of these books I'm going to be way more passionate about than others, and like I said, these are just listed from the smallest to the biggest. Next is Dangerous Visions, edited by Harlan Ellison. This counts as a standalone because you don't have to read again Dangerous Visions or the last Dangerous Visions. Dangerous Visions is important because it has some of the most important writers of the new wave era of science fiction all in one book. If you want the quintessential collection of 1960s and 1970s short fiction in sci-fi, it is Dangerous Visions. I loved the book when I read it. It was revelatory because I knew so little about vintage science fiction and fantasy at the time. Yeah, I'd read Asimov, I'd read some Arthur C. Clarke, but I didn't understand new wave or how important this book was until I finished it. Oh, I forgot to mention 217,000 words, 592 pages. It's a big boy for an anthology. It's like a must read. There's a good audiobook version. There's plenty of digital versions. You should try and find yourself a physical copy like the old ones with the green on them. I just picked one up not too long ago. It's real nice. This next one, I had to choose because there were two options for this, and I picked the one I like more, and it's, I guess, the more hipstery option because it doesn't have a TV adaptation, and that is Taipan by James Clavell. It is part of the Asian saga, but they're only loosely related to one another. I know that there's a descendant of a character in Taipan that is in Gaijin, but it doesn't matter. Taipan by James Clavell is 255,000 words and 732 pages. This is about the creation of Hong Kong as a trading center for all of the Western world. It is a historical epic, as you would expect from James Clavell, and I loved every second of reading it. I think there's really something special about a book that takes place when it does, because we're talking about like, what, 1800-ish, which how many historical epics take place right around that time in Asia? And you get to see firsthand the effects of colonization and just what things were like on the ground with these duplicitous traders that were giving opium to the Chinese to completely ruin their society and just getting rich off of all of it. And you see the creation of what was one of the most important cities that was a key to the East. I think that the history of Hong Kong is very fascinating, and this is a really good place to start where you can be very entertained and still get little bits of historical knowledge. It kind of frames Hong Kong in a way that allows you to move on to nonfiction if you want to and really have a good grasp of what was going on at the time. I'm a big fan of escapism in books. That's why I read a lot of the stuff I read, and escaping into the past is so fun. And this book does it from start to finish. I love it. All right, we're back on that nonfiction train. We have Invisible Armies by Max Boot, 270,000 words and 784 pages. I can almost guarantee none of you have read this book. I can almost promise it. Unless you're watching Steve Donahue, you've probably read it. My apologies for assuming you hadn't read a book. This book is great. I don't think it's one of the better books on this list, but it is an important book for readers who want to get into something about guerrilla warfare. Because yes, this book is about the history of guerrilla warfare from ancient times all the way up to now in the War on Terror. I think that if you want to get into a topic like this, this is a really good place to start. Yeah, you could read The Bear Went Over the Mountain to learn about how the Mujahideen fought Russia in the Afghan War. You could read Mao Zedong's book on guerrilla warfare, but like I said, when I talked about that book, the introduction written by the US officer that translated it is probably better than the advice itself. I think this is a quintessential book on guerrilla combat. You should start here and move on. You want to learn about Vietnam and how the Viet Cong fought, read the parts in here and then move on to other stuff. I think it's just a great book that no one has read, so go check it out. Here's another one where I couldn't decide which book to put on the list because the options were a bunch of different books, but we're going to go with my favorite yet again, and that is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is the best book he has written. I don't want to hear any arguments about it. There's not a better one. No, I have not read all of his books, but I don't have to know that this is the peak Stephen King novel. It's perfect. It is ginormous at 274,000 words and 849 pages. And I think that one of the things that makes the book so great is I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he did such a good job of just showing how terrible Dallas can be. Like, there is this undercurrent of just meanness in Dallas, like the history of horrific racism and just dirty cops. I'm not saying they're dirty now, but like law enforcement has struggled for a very long time in Dallas, and there's been so many criminal cases being overturned because the people were convicted just because of the color of their skin. And while that's not a major part of 11/22/63, Stephen King, like I said, does such a good job of having this like eerie undercurrent to all the places that the character goes throughout the book. I'm going to assume most of you know what the book's about, but I will explain it anyways. 11/22/63 is about a man who manages to travel back in time, and his goal is to stop the JFK assassination. But the problem is the past knows he's there, and it's going to try to get rid of him like a bacterial infection. So the world around him becomes the white blood cells that are trying to take him out. And the bigger of an impact he attempts to make on the past, the more dangerous things become. Stephen King does a really good job of using the environment around him to create this unsettling, suspenseful story, and I love it. I could go on about 11/22/63 forever, but I'm just going to stop there. It's a must-read book for just about everyone. Let's keep going. Yet again, I have a book where I'm like, do I suggest this one or a different one, or do I even suggest this at all? I'm going to add a huge caveat to this book. If you're one of those weirdos that wants to try reading Ayn Rand, yep, I'm going there. I suggest The Fountainhead. It is 321,000 words and 704 pages. I'm recommending The Fountainhead over Atlas Shrugged because while both books suck in their own special ways, Atlas Shrugged is like 50% bigger and 100% crappier than The Fountainhead. They both have the same thesis, but The Fountainhead is a better book. Now, I might be a little biased because it's about an architect, and I love architecture, and the main character was mentored by the fictional version of my favorite architect, Louis Sullivan. But even putting that aside, it's the better book. It is incredibly strange and in a lot of parts downright stupid. The premise is an architect has a vision for what things should look like, how they should function, how buildings should be, and he keeps trying to reach this goal, and people keep getting in his way, either telling him it can't be done or shouldn't be done. And so I think that the best way to look at this book beyond the herder objectivism nonsense that Ayn Rand is preaching in these books is this is about someone understanding what they want and caring enough about it to go for it. I like the book other than like the weird love triangle thing that goes on. This woman loves the main character more than anything in the world, to the point that she'll try to destroy his career because she doesn't think he can succeed because the world's against him, and she doesn't want it to drag on for most of his life, which is incredibly stupid. Also, she loves him so much that she marries another guy, and I don't know. The book is dumb, but if you're gonna read Ayn Rand, you should be reading The Fountainhead, or if you really want an easy way out, go read Anthem. But yeah, there we go. Let's move on to something good. And that something good is the great American novel, or, you know, one of them, but easily in like the top 3. No, it's not a standalone, but you should not read the sequels, and that's Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. At 366,000 words and 960 pages, we have the greatest Western ever written. What is there to say about Lonesome Dove? It is about a bunch of cowboys stealing cows from Mexico and going to Montana. That's it. That is the book. Now, there's so much more to it. We're talking about a book that is beautiful in the way it is written. Every character in it is a masterpiece. You care about all of them in their own special ways. Gus is the GOAT, probably the greatest character ever written in literature. I love him. I mean, this is about the death of the West, the death of the Wild West. We're talking about the late 1800s. These main characters are old former Texas Rangers who need a change of scenery. They've been stuck in a rut for like 10, 15 years. We see these guys who were once the biggest badasses in the Southwest going on one last journey to change their lives, and it's magnificent. I did a group discussion about this book, and I will put that in the description because it was a wonderful chat. If you've read the book, go check that out. If not, read the book. It's a must read. The audiobook is great. People complain about some audio issues at the beginning, but I think that's been cleaned up. So if you go through Libby, you might get the bad version. But I will say after the first chapter or 2, I think they figured out the audio was screwy and they fixed it. So just grind through that if you're going to do audio. And if not, just enjoy the gigantic book. I'm about to tell you about one of my favorite nonfiction books ever written. I don't know if I've mentioned it on other videos, but this is The Arms of Crup by William Manchester. 416,000 words, 976 pages. The Arms of Crup is about the Krupp family of Germany. They were the first ones to develop steel manufacturing in Germany. It was originally mass produced by the British British. It was a secret tech that no one else had, and the Krupp family figured it out. And from there on, they armed Germany's militaries with big artillery pieces, all sorts of stuff from the early 1800s all the way to the end of World War II. This follows the history of that family from its initial immigration into Germany, or kind of first recorded Krupp family member, all the way up to the early 1960s. This has everything. This is a great way to learn about the history of Germany in a very focused way. You get the early Industrial Revolution in Germany, through the Franco-Prussian War, and then World War I, World War II, all the nitty-gritties, and this family is insane. This book was so good that I stopped looking up information on Wikipedia because I didn't want spoilers. William Manchester does such a good job of writing very entertaining nonfiction, and I can't recommend this book enough. Is it for everyone? Probably not, but if you even have a remote interest in the history of Germany or the history of like World War II or World War I, like this is a must read. It's so good. And it is a chonker. Great audiobook too. When I first started reading it, I was reading a mass market paperback that was like 1,300 pages. It was the biggest mass market paperback chonker I think I own. All right, last but not least, we have the best military autobiography I've ever read. Now, there are shorter ones that are very good, like Storm of Steel by Ernst Junger, and I've mentioned this book before, so I won't go crazy with it. That is About Face, The Odyssey of an American Warrior by David H. Hackworth, 430,000 words and 875 pages. David Hackworth is one of the most decorated soldiers in the history of the United States. He served at the end of World War II. He served in the Korean War twice. He served in Vietnam like 3 or 4 times. I can't remember. He served so many times in Vietnam and got hurt so many times that they told him, if you get hurt again, we're pulling you out and you're never going back. So he hid his last grievous injury. This book is great. Not only is it about David Hackworth's life, it is about the history of the post-World War II U.S. military. You see everything. You see when they were like, oh, we're going to shrink the army because everything's going to be done in small units and nuclear bombs in like the 1950s and early 60s. And then you have everything that happened in Vietnam. You have a guy who has gone from the little nothing, lied about his age, 15 or 16-year-old soldier occupying Western Europe at the end of World War II, all the way up to a colonel in Vietnam who knows the war cannot be won the way it is being fought. He is hypercritical of the U.S. military in all the best ways. I think this book is magnificent. You definitely need to go read it. That's my list. Let me know what gigantic books you have as your favorites. They got to be standalones, over 600 pages. Let me know about them in the comments because I would love to read them. Let me know what you thought of the books on this list. Have you read them? There's at least like 3 on here that probably no one has read that will watch this video. I want you to try to figure out which ones they are. I've been wanting to make this for a long time, so thanks for checking this out and thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.